Hey folks, how are y'all doing? I'm gonna try to answer a question with an experiment. This is not something I really had planned to do. I mean, not today anyway. This was something that I wanted to do. I just hadn't really messed around much with it, other than trying to make a Squid Game level of the broke glass. So anytime you got a mod, I actually started to make a. I actually started to make another video how to mod. And it basically says, what is a mod? And a mod, that has physics. It's a folder, first of all, that if you're working on the mod, it goes in your user folder, in the vehicles folder. Inside of that mod will be the model from Blender, the object in Blender, and info.json, which all the JSON is just a text file. I edit it with most people use Notepad++. It just contains the name of the mod. See right here? And it's got your name. That's basically what that does, so that when you select the mod, it's got the name to pick. And then you got a Jbeam. Now a Jbeam is basically nodes, beams, and triangles, but it's a little bit more than that. The info file, like I said, is just a text document that contains the name of the mod. Now these are the bare minimum things you've got to have in that folder to load a mod, even to begin with. So with this glass test, there's nothing in here. I'm going to put let me make sure I get the right one. Yeah, it's that one. Let me close all this stuff so it's not confusing. So we're going to put basically a blank Jbeam in here, and now I've shared these two already in the past, so I'll share the links again. We got an info file and we got a blank Jbeam. It's not completely blank. It's got the bare minimum stuff you need to make it work, just with the exception of the nodes, the beams, and triangles, which are absent in here. It may be a little more easier to explain what a node looks like in a text document than to just use your imagination. I'd probably better if I explain. So a node is a vertex if you're looking at an object in Blender. If you go into edit mode, you see there's vertices, and each one's got a place in relation to where it's located in X, Y, and Z space. Now, I know some of this might sound scientific. Believe me, I'm a dumbass. I ain't a scientist, and I damn sure ain't a mathematician. So if I can do it, anybody can do it. That's for sure. Now these nodes, or vertices, and these beams, or edges, or if the object is triangulated, it's made up of triangles, edges, nodes. So when you look at these, what they're going to look like in a text document, it's going to be pretty much a name for the node, like left 1 or L1, R1, L2, R3, kind of depending on if it's on the left or the right side. It'll be an L or an R, and there'll be 4 L's and there'll be 4 R's for rights, and they'll have coordinates, X, Y, Z coordinates, which would be like X, Y, and Z. But But you know, the easiest thing to do is not even have to worry about all that stuff. All you have to worry about, you know what? I'm exporting this thing as a Jbeam. It's going to do all that for me. All I have to do is copy the stuff from the exported Jbeam into that one. I know it seems like a lot of stuff. It is a lot of stuff. And after you do it a few times, you can be like, oh, that ain't nothing. It's easy to do. So I've already made like a Blender box video in under 2 minutes kind of video. This is going to go a little deeper in that. This is going to explain a little more. But I guess I can just make this kind of a recap. So this Blender box, we're going to rename it to New Box. And we'll change that material name to something other than that. I'm not giving it a texture, I'll just give it a color. Now we don't need the light or the camera. But anytime you have an object on the ground, just get it out of the ground so it's not in the ground. Now you see this little orange dot, that's its origin. That just means where it rotates. It needs to be at a universal location that the game also recognizes, which in Blender is known as, if you go to view here, 3D cursor, make sure all of these are zeros, because it's easy to, you can move this around. So you just want to make sure all that stuff's at 0. That's the same location the game will know, and they'll say, hey, I know where 0, 0, 0 is, and if you say that's where it is, that's where it's at. But anytime you move an object, its origin moves. You just need to apply all transforms so that it resets it. Now, this box will export it, because right now it's just a flex body, or it's just the model. It isn't do anything yet. So in the vehicles folder, this glass, this is just the flex body. This is the model you see in Blender, and we'll export that. Now we're going to also use this as a Jbeam, which means we're going to extract the location of these vertices and these edges and those triangles, so that where the Jbeam version of this thing goes, the model will also go. Now to do that, we'll just export. Oh, I almost forgot. We got to save our Blender file. If we don't save the Blender file, it ain't exporting anything. I usually save my Blender file in the mod folder that I'm working in for that particular mod. That way I can just load back the Blender file if I want to do anything else to it. So now that that's done, we'll export this cube as a Jbeam. At the bottom, it'll tell you if it's successfully exported or not. 2 errors you'll see: cannot export because this contains ngons. If that's the case for you, go to edit mode, hit A to select all, face, triangulate faces. That's not going to be the case with this. It's when you start making different things and your topography's terrible like mine, then you end up with what is not a quad, what is not a triangle, but you know, an n-gon, more sides than 4. Not to get too much into that. All right, we exported that. So there's an exported folder. It's put that folder there because that's where we put our Blender file. Now we'll load this up, and you'll see that it's got the nodes. And like I said, there'd be 4 L's and 4 R's. But that ain't important. It did all that for you. All I'm pointing out is what they look like. So those are the nodes, and those are the beams, and these are the triangles. It knows a beam because a beam is the line that is between two nodes. So that node, for example, and that node, like just for an example, that one and that one, is what makes that beam. And a beam is a spring, basically, that can expand or contract. And what we do, we move that to here, like this. And now we got to drag and drop. So, firstly, we go to flex bodies. What's the name of our flex body? It's called new box. It's not a bad idea to copy this to your clipboard. That way you don't misspell it. The group, you can decide whatever the group's going to be. I'm just going to leave it A. You can name it whatever you want to name it. And then where the nodes are, group A. So we grab these and we drop them right there. You go down, we skip this here, we'll go down to beams. We're going to drag these beams. Oh, you don't use this ID 1 and 2 thing. That just tells you how it's listed. It just shows you what they look like, or how to. Just ignore those. Drag these. Put these here. And then go down to the triangles and grab them and put them there. Now we got to consider the weight, because each one of these balls have weight. There's 4 of them on the top, 4 on the bottom, and the way that this blank Jbeam, it's already wrote out to say each one weighs 2 kilos. That's fine, we'll leave that. Collisions with the ground, true. This isn't a dynamic object that's folding or anything, so it doesn't need to have self-collisions. That's more computationally expensive. If you don't need to use it, don't use it. Node material, from the best I can tell, that's just the sound that it makes. It can sound like metal, plastic, cloth, or wood. Those are the ones I know have different sounds. The rest of the list of stuff, I can't tell a difference. Now going down to the beams, this is what the spring strength set. I'm not going to explain any of this yet. I'm just going to leave all that. I just wanted to point out the weight. Oh yeah, and the friction coefficient. How much does it grip the ground? 1.0 is like default, but like let's say 0.1. That'll be the less than 1 means it's more slippery on the surface, like a piece of ice on a smooth surface would be like 0.1. Now we can load, we save our Jbeam file, we can load the level, we can spawn the object. Now there's no preview picture, so if you want to, you can just take a screenshot inside of Blender and then go to your photo editor and paste it. Wait a minute. I didn't hit print screen, apparently. Oh, what the shit? What is this shit? I've never seen this before. I don't want that shit to work. That ain't what I want. I just want it to be like it used to be, where I just hit print screen and paste. Anyway, we'll crop this 2:1. And I don't like the way this thing does, but if I ever get rich, I'll get Photoshop. Scale image, 1200 by 600. Export as, now in that mod folder, my glass, default .png or JPEG. This will be your preview picture. Just loading the game. We load small grid. We'll load that box. Now this is going to be more than just a basic box. I'm going to elaborate and do more with it. Try to make some glass out of it. But this is kind of like a recap of what I've already explained in other videos, just to get you to make a basic box. See our little image here. Monster. Oh, yeah, I forgot something. It's alright though. It is a monster. Monster box. A blue box. See those little nodes. You can hit Control N to see the numbers and stuff on them. NR7, NR3. You can hit Control B to see the beams and Control T to see the collision triangles. But you don't normally see that stuff. It's usually hidden. But just to kind of show you, you can turn all that off by going into vehicle config, debug, and just you can turn all that stuff off in here if you want. That way you don't have to cycle through all the different things. Because there is actually about 25 beam types that you can cycle through. Just all different kinds of measurements for strengths and types and just a lot of stuff. Not important right now. Now what I do want to kind of go into is the spring strength. So if we go back to our Notepad++, whoa, we're done with that, by the way. We'll just close it. I'm going to move that window to there. So if it's got less beam spring, then it's a weaker spring. Anytime you are working on a mod like this, you can hit Control R to reload it. Now you can see this, you might concede, you might not. Maybe make it weaker. Just make the beam spring really weak. You can see it kind of bends and stuff. Now the way I understood it, well, maybe I shouldn't even mention that. I'll leave that out for now. A beam spring, that means it can break, but it's not the way you think. It's not breaking like you think, where the object breaks dynamically. It just means that the little triangles, those triangles break. Well, actually it means the beams break, and if the beams break, well, it's like if you're in Blender and you were in edit mode and you picked a beam or an edge in Blender, like it's called edges. You pick the edge and you delete it. Well, you're going to lose a lot more than just that. You're going to lose some polygons too. Well, that's kind of how when this thing breaks, if you have it so that it can break. Very similar. Well, that all broke, didn't it? Let's say 1500 strength. Well, if I turn all that stuff off, you kind of get a better idea. So yeah, they're breaking, but it's not the kind of breaking that you know. you're expecting to see. Let me make that double-sided. That'll make it a little easier to, oops, wrong one. See, that's not the kind of breaking I have in mind. FLT underscore max means pretty much the max strength. It ain't gonna break. Doesn't mean your mod can't explode though. For example, if you have too much damping and it doesn't weigh enough and the beam springs too low, it can just see when it pauses, it's very unstable. If I put it in super slow motion and unpause it, you can kind of see what's kind of going on. It blew up or imploded. Now, the only way you could get around that, have that much damping, it'd have to weigh a lot. And it'd have to have a lot of spring. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's got to have some pretty damn strong springs if it's got that much damping. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh, it's still in slow motion. Oh, I guess the spring doesn't matter. Oh, I'm in the wrong spot. Look at me. Give it more spring. Now the Beam wiki, let's see, is this page. It kind of explains what damping does, what the spring and damping, how they affect things. And what, like, how examples of beam spring, and now that's common. I see that a lot in the stuff I make. So yeah, this is like a basic introduction. Now I did not make any support beams, so my object, as you can see, does kind of collapse if I put enough pressure on it. One thing you can do with the Jbeam editor, you can, let's make this X-ray mode. You can hit A to select all and tell it for every vertice, connect every node, and basically it'll connect each node to each node. And that can make a lot of nodes if you got a lot of. It can add up quick, so all I'm saying, in a more detailed model. Now, if we were to export that as a Jbeam, we have to go back into here, reload it, because we got new beams, and you never know, it may decide it wants to rename some of them nodes. It likely did not for this example, but I don't ever take a chance. I know that it can do it. What did I just do? So yeah, you can see there's more beams in the new one. Now, like I said, I don't take a chance. I just copy the stuff back over again, just in case it decided to change stuff. And we'll add the new beams. And we'll add the new, well, I don't think any of that's changed, but you never know. Never know. I will just resave it, and then the game, Control R to reload. Now it's a lot stronger, a lot more support. You can turn the beams on, for example. And see what I mean? There are cross beams in there now that connect like you see in Blender. That makes it strong. Now this is not actually what I wanted to make. I wanted to make a piece of glass. So I'm going to hit Control Z and back up. Get back before I did that step. Now if you think about a piece of glass that breaks, well, it's not a box. Usually glasses are flat. But this does bring up a good point here. If you modify, say you modify this mesh, you re-export it into the game, overwrite the other flex body that's in there, well, the model's going to change like you'd expect. But the Jbeam hasn't changed because it's whatever was exported a little while ago. Whatever you've already, that doesn't change. You have to re-export as a Jbeam with its new values. Now you might get lucky and sometimes this will tell you, hey, that got refreshed, would you like to reload? But don't ever count on it. So what do? Well, you gotta move that stuff over again if you want to update it to that new design. Does it matter if any of these are off? Only if you got OCD and you like things neat. I can't lie, it bugs me to look at it when it ain't lined up, but it ain't necessary. It ain't. All this fancy stuff, well, it could be like this. It wouldn't make a difference. Unless it makes a difference to you, then it makes a difference. Now, update. Let's see that this Jbeam changed because, well, we re-exported it. Now, just the same way you can have that box, you can make a mesh cube or sphere, and we'll give it the same texture so that it's easier to deal with. Now we didn't move it, so its origin's off, or apply all transforms. Now we're going to export this ball as a DAE, overwrite that other thing. Oh, look, it's called sphere. It's not going to work because the flex body is not looking. It's not looking for a sphere. It's still looking for new box. So just temporarily rename that. So I can make that new box. Selection only, because we're only sending that, and it should put a ball in there instead, but it's still going to behave like a thing. Now this is where things get weird, because what it tries to do, when these nodes move and bend and these beams expand and contract, well, it looks for whatever the closest vertice of that mesh is, and it tries to match what the vertice of Jbeam is doing. Well, that's impossible. That's a box and that's a ball. That's a flat box at that. So that's why things do like this. If you actually wanted to make this thing export like a ball, well, it's going to make a lot of beams. Look at the little wireframe. How many edges do you think that is? It's quite a bit. How many vertices is that? It's quite a bit. All of them are going to turn into nodes, and guess what? All them nodes got weight. But anyway, we'll send it over anyway. Export Jbeam new box. Now it's actually not a box, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you name it, just as long as you know what it is. And like I said, look at all them nodes. Well, now, when you got that many, it's just better to just left click and then move this down to where they stop and right click. I need to replace them with these. Now we'll replace the beams and the triangles. I want to purposely mess this up just to show you what happens when you forget something like the beams. And all you send over the balls. I'll show you what it'll do. All them balls, well, they ain't got nothing holding them together. So they basically, I mean, that'd be cool if you wanted to make a Tron light cycle and you wanted, you know, to make these things that look like walls that go out into infinity, you know, as it moves. But that ain't what we're doing. So that's, if your mod ever does that, you know you forgot to put the beams in, likely. There's a lot of them. You would actually use a lesser polygon sphere with less sides. If you wanted to do this, you wouldn't use one like this. If you look at my old video, let's make a Jbeam. See, this, that used to be my thinking, is you just export what you see, and that's terrible on performance, because that's a lot of damn stuff it's got to calculate. Now that's kind of more like a balloon, but look how heavy that thing is. Well, it's a lot of nodes. They all got weight. So you either got to make them lighter, but don't forget, if you make it lighter, it needs to have less spring. Just doesn't have a lot of spring, but it's got way too much damping. I'll just leave that at 10. Now, I don't know what weight needs what spring, or what's the threshold. You know what, I kind of just, this is kind of like clay, where I made enough of these things where I kind of start to get a feel for it. You know, it's kind of like a medium, kind of like you're making something out of art. Until you make enough stuff, you kind of really don't get a feel for how the thing's going to behave until you make it, and you kind of, you know, experiment and say, oh, okay, well, that made it more like this, and that made it more like that. Give it some more spring. Let's see, it's a little more stable. Still, you know. Now all that jiggling, I don't remember what this was showing. And it basically says you don't have the correct weight. Basically your damping is off for the weight, or the spring's not right. We'll give it more damping. It's still wiggling. I don't know. Maybe get close to that threshold. There it went. Boom. It blew up. So you'd have to give it more weight to have more damping if that happens. Now that's a lot better. It's still, you know. But remember too, I don't have I don't have anything connecting any of these together. Like there's nothing to keep this from, other than these things, individual strings. There's nothing in between these. Now you would not want to do a mesh nodes thing, because that would make about, I don't know, maybe 10 million beams. It'd probably crash my blender. So what you can do, you can pick a node, and pick another node, and hit F. I'll turn X-ray on. Hit F, and it'll draw a single beam between them. Now you can do that. You can randomly select a few of these. Don't damn pick them all, though. Not if you got that many. We'll just pick a few in various places like this. Now we'll do that. And you see that made 252. Well, you can imagine if you picked all of these, it'd be quite a bit. Now this is going to be really, really crummy, but It'll just give you an idea how these supports work. We'll re-export this. Reload the exported file. I'm going to just hope it didn't make anything different and only copy the beams over. Maybe we get lucky. Save some time. But it's not a bad idea to just get in the habit of moving all the stuff over each time. It didn't like that. There ain't no telling. I'm gonna move the other stuff over. Cause I don't know. It may not have. It may have changed stuff, and kind of like you use Star Trek teleporter and send someone through the teleporter, but only like part of the matter gets sent, and the other part don't. It ain't gonna be stable when it gets to where it's going. That might be the case. You may say, why do you got to move that stuff over? Why can't it just export the stuff with all that stuff? Well, it just don't. It can't read your mind. It doesn't know everything you're going to do with it. It doesn't know what the weight's going to be. It doesn't know. I mean, I guess the guy that made it could change all that, make a new version of it. See, now these have supports inside, but they're still really crappy because they're not, everything ain't connected. It's all just randomly here and there connected. So if you were going to make a ball, it'd be better to make a new ball with less faces. Like this, add mesh sphere. So that one got a lot less. Let's do that. Alright, we'll move it up. We'll hide this here for a minute. Now in edit mode, I'm going to hit A to select all. Mesh Jbeam nodes connector. That made 1,423 beams or edges. Alright, we'll export this. Oh, almost forgot. Apply all transforms. The orientation was off. Export Jbeam sphere. And here we'll load that. Move it to there. We'll delete these nodes, beams, and triangles. Move them over. Then we'll do that with the beams. I mean, it's still a lot, but it's nothing near as bad. I think the most I made something was like 90,000 beams, and after that, the computer just locked up. We talk about something unoptimized. That was pretty unoptimized. It didn't need that 90,000. Didn't need 9,000, whatever it was I was making. Maybe 90. But 90,000, no. Alright, so you're going to see when I update, it'll have new beams. You'll still have that same high polygon ball, but it'll have new beams. Which actually made the Jbeam just a little smaller than the ball, so I'll just shrink the ball. And while I'm at it, You know what? That'll be fine. So we got to re-export the actual DAE. That don't take long. So you can see the lesser polygon Jbeam for the more polygon ball. So you'd simplify. If you look at the Jbeam for like the dummy, his arms and legs and all, they're like maybe 11 polygons in total. They're very simple. Nothing compared to what like the actual model looks like. You can load that up like in the Jbeam editor. I have him in here. I'll load him in there and take a look. I think I got him in here. Well, actually, I moved him out. That's alright. Maybe another time. Alright, so that's that. What's this got to do with glass? Nothing. I didn't even get to that yet. So if you wanted to make a piece of glass, you'd basically do the same thing you did here, except you'd have to pre-break it. Just delete all of that. Add a mesh cube. We'll scale it down. So it's kind of like a piece of glass in a way that it's kind of flat. Now we'll go into edit mode. And we'll take our knife. I'll just kind of cut this little corner. And then we'll go to the bottom of it. Let's make sure we get the other side. Turn X-ray on. So what you're going to do basically is you just kind of mimic what you did on the top. I know it's not perfect. Then we'll go back to the selector and hit F to make new edges, and then we'll pick the faces and we'll say mesh separate new selection, or mesh separate selection. Back in object mode, we'll hide one of these pieces because this has got, I don't know how I did that. Damn, how'd I do that? I forgot to cut something. Just go back in time. Oh, when I told it to separate, I had that selected. How is that not picking that? Did I not? Well, that's a dog Scooby-Doo mystery, folks. I don't know why I can't select that. Triangulate the faces. Alright, try this again. Mesh separate by selection. Now, I knew there was going to be a hole there, so we'll just select our edges. Hit F. Then we'll unhide the other piece. Flip it around. Do the same thing. Now, just for simplicity, we'll call the little piece A and other piece B. But since we're going to have two objects, and I'll use this also as their Jbeams, we got to give it in the object data properties a node prefix. So make things easy, I usually just like, if it's a group, if it's A, I'll make the node prefix A, and B will be B. And then when I do the groups, I'll make the groups A and B. That way everything's easy to keep up with. Like I said before, we'll get this out of the ground. Apply all transforms. Also, I've already triangulated it. So now we just export this as DAE. Now in that same folder, we'll just replace that flex body with these. Oh, I didn't give it a texture. We'll just give it that same blue box. Because it's already made. Alright, export DAE. Overwrite that. We are sending both of them, so that's not necessary. Now we're going to export the. That's going to look funny in here. For one thing, the Jbeam to this doesn't know what those new flex bodies are. So if we were to look at the top, the flex bodies, we need to say, well, now it's A and B. That's what we named them. And we got a group B now. We'll delete all this because we're not using none of it. We're going to delete that. The beams and the triangles. Now, in Blender, we'll export both of these as Jbeams. And we'll load them up. There's A and B. We'll move them over to here. And we will move their nodes. Hey, do you see that little A and that little B? Those were little A and a little B. Because it's going to call all these nodes L1, L2, L3, and if you got two objects and they both got L1s and L2s and R1s and R2s, well, they'll be duplicates and you can't have that. So you give them a node prefix, that way it puts the little prefix before there. You can have multiple objects. Otherwise, it won't work. So just under here, put group B. I'll put group B to here. Then the beams, you don't have to have it separated by a group name or anything. You can just have one after the other. And honestly, it doesn't matter if B is before A or A is before B as far as this part goes. However, each one of these can have their own properties, but I'm not getting into that yet. Now, since we just did a pretty good bit of stuff, we can update our mod. And see, now we got two pieces. Now the beams ain't behaving like glass at all. But you get the idea. That's kind of how you do stuff like that. Now you'd want it to hold together. Since these things are pretty much directly on top of one another, the only way this is working is because self-collision is turned off. If self-collision was turned on, them beams would be fighting, these nodes would be fighting for the same spot. They don't like to share. They'd be forcing away from one another. Now you can connect these in here, and since they are overlapping pretty much, the only way you're really gonna get to connect them, you have to manually type that stuff in. Unfortunately, you'll have to connect these nodes, but it's not hard to do. You just go to where these beams end, and it's like that's AR. I know you can't see this, it's hard to see on my screen. Let's borrow that. And we're making AR10, and that's going to connect to BR10. If I reload it, and get up close again, those are going to actually be connected right there where I made that connection. Now if I do this with the rest of it, that's BR8. Luckily all these the numbers are the same, they're just A or B, same numbers. That usually is not always the case. Don't ever count on that. I'm just copying and pasting these just to save time, not type in that bracket and those quotes. And it don't matter if you put that one in first or that one in first. All it knows is they're connected. Now the beam spring and all the stuff like that is not, it's not great. But say we want that to be able to break free, we're done with them. We'll copy this information and paste it. Anytime you see a change, everything that comes below will follow what's above it. So all this stuff follows this stuff, but since there's a new declaration of beam spring and strengths and deforms and all that, well, what's under it, we'll get what this says. So we'll make this so it can break at 1,000 strength. Well, 1,000 is kind of weak. We'll do 5,000. Well, let's do 10,000. Let's do 15,000. Shit. Now you want it to not be so bendable. That's where your beam spring comes in and your weight. Also, we did not connect any reinforcing beams, so in edit mode, if we look at just the nodes or vertices, this node is not connected to that node, and that node's not connected to that node, and this one ain't connected to that one, and that one ain't connected. You get the idea. They're not connected to each other. So you'd have to say like mesh Jbeam nodes connector, and then do the same thing with the other part. Why didn't I do this the first time? I forgot. So both of these now get re-exported. Not the DAEs, just the Jbeam information. Since that changed, we got more beams. Now you can take a gamble and think, well, it didn't change any of that. Which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to just take a chance so I can save some time. I'm just going to put the beams, because all it should have did is added new beams. And I'm going to hope that those are the same, or we'll have a problem. A poquito problema. Poquito problema. So, as you can see, it's more sturdy. Now, glass has got a lot more damping than that, so let's see how much we can go. I found too that if you give it the possibility that it can deform, it can seem to take more damping because it's actually getting some give. Like, if I put it 1500, probably gonna explode. No, it didn't actually. I'm surprised. That's probably pretty. No, it's still got a lot of wiggle to it. That's the spring. We need to have more spring. Now, obviously that's not glass. Oops. And just real quickly, get off my damn screen. We'll just tell this to be, oh, let me turn all that off. That's annoying. Look at. One thing I don't like, though, I'm not fond of the way the alpha does in here. It's like impossible to have two things with alphas next to each other and it not look funny. And if you make it double-sided, it just complicates it even more. They just don't look good. Things don't look good when they're, I don't know. I am not texturing it very good either, though. That don't help. But now if you got two objects and they're kind of over one another and they both got alpha channels, they look funny. Like you don't see all that you think you should see. It's kind of like this weird illusion of, or like some of it doesn't show up for whatever reason. I mean, it looks fine now. But I can't simulate what I'm trying to explain, because apparently this is okay. It just made me look like a dumbass. Like I said, I'm a dummy. I don't know what I'm talking about half the time. If it sounds good, I just go with it. I don't know, maybe they updated the alpha transparency stuff. I don't know, it seems to be fine. It seems to look normal. Now, the scale that I did these just 2 little pieces. Well, imagine what I did, but you having to basically cut these damn things into like however many times you want your glass to break. About how many times you'd have to cut all these things in little pieces, and then you'd have to export them as group A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and kind of pre-connect them all like I did. But as you can see with the transparency on, you can still see where it's cracked. And that is one thing about the alpha that well, it's not really the alpha, it's just that the object is actually in a few pieces. Or in a couple pieces. Somebody gonna say, well, what if you drive into that? Well, we'll drive into it and see. Careful, because I'll get sidetracked real quick. Before I know it, I'll be playing with these little pieces of glass. Or, you know, I attempt to make glass. Now you can make the textures look a lot better with more effort. I don't know why it does that shit. Why does it insist on rotating parts? I don't know. Pieces falling. Why not just make even more? Made that many, make twice as many. A lot of damn parts. Alright. Didn't like that. That's kind of neat though. Now, I did just duplicate all them parts. I mean, it's not. Good luck tabbing back to the car. Damn, I just had it and I skipped it. Hang on. I mean, you can make it look less blue. You can do a lot of stuff with the texture. This is just a basic alpha put normal maps and make it look like it's got scratches and stuff on it. That's not even getting into. I mean, we still aren't talking about PBR materials. Reflect level. And you know, I don't care what anybody says. Something happened in one of these last couple updates because the camera starts to act really. Sensitivity in moving left and right changes, and I don't know what messing it up. But it didn't used to be like that. Something going on. I don't know if it's my mouse or what. Let me just make some quick normal maps for that. So earlier we took that picture. Let's go back to the photo editor. And let's just tell this to be a generic normal map. Let's do a generic normal map. I'm going to export this in the folder of the mod. Put a little underscore in for normal. And then the texture editor. Load the normal map. Now I realize this is like just something quick. It's not even, UV maps aren't even right. I didn't even think about the UVs. Let's go back to here. Yeah, because I didn't put a texture on it. I wasn't thinking about the UVs. Damn, I just don't do right, does it? Shit. Close enough. All these have to be reloaded, I think. No, maybe not. I was thinking I had to reload them all. Oh, we're just messing around with this thing anyway. It's not like we're doing anything real important. Now, there's a way to make these also swap textures. I think I'm gonna get into that tonight. I think I'll just leave it here. But yeah, you can make these swap textures so that it does a texture swap. I think I might can do it real quick. Look in my reference. It's not that one. Or that one. Here it is. Alright. Alright, so you have to define the flex bodies as usual. And then assign the deform group. And like always, I didn't copy everything I needed when I saved this. Let me just do this. Just copy this to clipboard. And go into here. So the deform material base, that would be the pre-broke piece of texture. Which I didn't make a texture for. Well, I just edited that texture. Let me close the game. This ain't gonna work with the game running. Not this anyway. I gotta add a new material. I'll just make that one. Just give it that name. Now we can reload it. So like I said, the deformed base will be the non-broke texture, and that I think was just called new box, and I think I named the other one. Don't think, double check. And nothing more annoying than not knowing why something ain't working, and it all come down to why I spelled something wrong. New box. Too many windows open now. I'm damn getting confused. New box broke. The other one. Now, but I only probably need one of. I only think I need one of those. I don't think I need the other one. But I do got to tell it, well, which one they're breaking to trigger it. What did I call it? Forgot. Deform group's called break. So when these break, it triggers a texture swap. Should anyway. Well, both textures are the same at the moment because I didn't save my damn changes. There's only one. Am I missing something? Not damn sure why the other text. Oh, here it is. I'm missing something. I ain't sure what it is. I just got to have an empty one at the end. And I've done this before several times, and